Hello, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Cosmic Force Podcast. I am Caleb, one of your hosts, and tonight we are talking about our favorite Star Wars comics. But before we get too deep into that theory crafting, let's go around the room and introduce the biased host who will be trying to convince you that their comic is the best. And let's start where we always do with our producer, Emma. Emma, how are you doing tonight?
Technology sucks.
Oh
boy. Yeah.
but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, like now I have some alcohol. That's good. That's a positive. That's coming out of this, I suppose. I'm still excited to talk about it though. It's gonna be a fun topic, whether it's live or not. So thanks everybody that was live for sticking with us for like 45 minutes as we were trying to solve it. Really appreciate you guys, but yeah, here we are.
Exactly. So Emma, we did everything we could, but for some reason we couldn't make the show live. So we're recording this so our fans can listen to it when you get a chance. So leave your normal comments down in the comment description of YouTube and your favorite podcasting app. We'll still be responding to that. And we're looking forward to it. So now that we got half the way through, Timothy, how are you doing today?
What's up, guys? I am doing so well. I'm kind of actually digging this whole mood lighting thing behind me. It's gotten really dark since we started a little bit later. I feel like I'm about to enter some strange netherworld thing or something. I don't know. Is the upside down a thing? I think this is a thing, but I think it's red. It's okay. It's good to be here with you guys. I'm excited to talk about my favorite comics. I'm ready to listen to yours. And I'm interested to see if any of them that you mentioned, if I have never read before, because I will add them to my list next week.
Oh, love it.
Absolutely. And tonight we're joined by a guest from our fellow UTV podcast show. It is Eric himself.
Oh my goodness. Hello, everyone. It's so excellent to be here. I've had a phenomenal day thus far. Not working. Working is not fun, but I did have a fun mail day. As you can see next to me here, I got finally my... I'm going to pick it up now. Hold on. This is going to be risky here on camera.
Oh boy.
I got my Ahsoka statue from Sideshow. Here we go. Get her up here. So I had previously gotten some figures from Sideshow, which I'm not great at because I can't pose them well. So I used all my points to buy this statue of Mando Ahsoka. I love her. She's amazing. And then, of course... Oh, I got to put it down. That's always the hard part. Okay, great. And then I got 3 Funkos in the mail today from San Diego Comic-Con, all the shared exclusives. I set an alarm with Charlie to get up and order these when they went on sale. So first off, just for you guys, all you comics fans, we got Chrysanthemum.
Yeah.
He's so fuzzy.
He has brass knuckles and fuzz and hair. Like it's legitimately one of the most impressive Funkos I've ever seen.
It's very
I'm really
detailed,
actually stoked about it. It's astonishing. We also have from the upcoming Andor series, Cassian with the full beard. And what I like about this, if all you are Funko collectors in box, you don't see this on the back. He's got a little hood.
Oh, that's
Look at
sick.
that. They added that, which I love.
It's not that the hood's not big enough for his head.
I know it's a bad. It's not a good hood, Caleb. It's just a hood. But then finally, I got this Purge Trooper from Obi-Wan, which of course started in Jedi Fallen Order.
Sick.
But I like the subtle differences that were totally worth $15 to get that. So yeah, that's been my day. It's just getting swag, and I'm also very excited. Of course, when Emma messaged me and said, "Hey, we need another for the show," I'm like, "Let's talk some freaking Star Wars comics." Cannot wait.
Yes, thank you so much for being available for us last minute. Dear Tyler is down with the Rona and
Lady Rona.
Yep, finally got him, but we wish him well. He's gonna be fine, folks. He just feels a little under the weather, which is understandable. So we miss you, Tyler, and thank you, Eric.
Exactly. Sore throats and podcasts don't mix.
No.
Absolutely not.
But for those of you who are joining us, if this is your very first episode, welcome to a very binary number. It's episode 64 of a Star Wars comics podcast. Again, we're the Cosmic Force, and we broadcast on YouTube every Wednesday on youtube.com/Utini. We try to make it at 8 p.m. This one is the exception, not the rule. If you can't join us live, that's okay. As you're listening now, we'll be on your favorite podcast platforms, and the video will still be on YouTube later. If you will want to, if we're also part of the Utini podcast network of shows, a Discord channel with over 1,000 members at YouTube or utini.com/Discord, with hundreds of active members and dozens of channels. It's a great place to get plugged in. And if you like what you see and want to say thank you, head over to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Utini. For as little as $5 a month, you gain exclusive access to all of the podcasts we put out, the entire network of shows, as well as exclusive merch and community involvement and activities. Do we have any new patrons that we want to shout out this week?
No new patrons. But yeah, if you're interested in joining our Patreon, it's a great place. Lots of fun people. And we love your support. Lots of fun extras.
Yeah.
In fact, Tim and I have been kind of tossing around an extra. Yes, tease. I've only told Tim about it, so I have to tell you guys after the show. But keep your eyes
I know
peeled
nothing
on
of what they're
that.
talking about, everyone. Just so you know, if you're
Sneaky,
aware of what I
sneaky.
do around here, I didn't know there were secrets involved. And
Well, Eric, you're gonna love
anyway.
it. You're gonna love
Oh,
it.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
excited to find out with the rest of y'all and consider this a future patron shout out for you. Yes, you.
Yes.
You're listening and thinking about it. I'm going to shout you out.
We love you.
You're a wonderful human.
We do.
Thank you.
Exactly.
All right. With that, we do have a weekly pull list this week, though. There was 2 comics that came out this week. The first one that we're going to be talking about is Obi-Wan #3, called Darkest Before the Dawn, written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Alessandro Miracolo and sorry, I'm reading this off of the comic and the font is so weird.
You're killing it.
Colors are by Frank William, letters by Joe Caramanga, and cover from our friend Phil Noto. I love this cover. We've known about this cover for quite some time, and I've just been really looking forward to this issue because it just seems like classic, straight up Clone Wars, and I'm here for that. So yeah, really excited to dig into that. The second issue that we have this week is issue number 22 of the Dr. Aphra 2020 series. This issue is written by Alyssa Wong with art by Minkyu Jun and Natasha Bustos, and the colors are by Rochelle Rosenberg, letters by Joe Caramanga, and the cover is by Scott Forbes. Oh, and by the way, the subtitle for this issue is called Echoes, just like it says on the title.
Echoes.
So, really excited. Aphra's, she's in some trouble. Let's see if she can get out of it.
I have not read either of these, but that Aphra cover is
It is
making me
gorgeous.
nightmares.
Awesome.
In the best of ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Aphra covers always seem to be like a little different than most of the other Star Wars sort of things. They're a lot more art house, for lack of a better term, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely. So if you want to get your copy or copies of these comics, all the links will be down in the description below. We highly recommend you check these comics out. Dr. Aphra's heating up. The Obi-Wan has been good for healing that Obi-Wan FOMO. So
Yeah, seriously. It is so weird going from the I have new Star Wars to watch every week to being like, oh right, because obviously we love it's book release week, it's comics week. This is all great, but there's just
still
something
something
about
missing.
it. Yeah, yeah, no, I love that.
About being on, because we're all reading our favorite books and all these comics kind of at different times, but when a movie comes out or that show comes out, it's really great to talk about it all at the same time.
Yeah,
like our Discord. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yes.
Hint, wink, wink. Even.
Love it.
Correct. So speaking of things we're reading, let's go around here. And is there anything that we're reading notable in the group? Anything that we want to talk about?
I've been working on Padawan. I've been pretty enjoying it. It's been interesting to see that period and in Obi-Wan's life. And I've been, without spoiling anything, just because it came out yesterday, it's been enjoyable. Yeah, I know that was like the worst pitch.
Great review. Great solid pick. Yeah,
5 out of 7, enjoyable.
Yeah, I thought Padawan was good as well. Of course, check our review at utini.com.
Yes.
The video also came out today that Nathan did. If you want to check out what we thought about it, I enjoyed Padawan. I thought it was good. A little younger than some recent YAs, which I think is fine.
Agreed.
But I wanted to share what I've been reading. This is, I'll admit it's a bit of a flex. That's fine. This has been my week.
Yes.
I'm making my way through Princess and the
jealous.
Scoundrel, the kissing book of Star Wars, as it's also known. And let's see, embargo is not up. So what I can say is that if you like the excerpts that have been coming out from USA Today and other things like that, weren't those awesome? What if that was just like 300 pages longer?
Yeah,
That's all.
Sign me up.
I can
Is
say.
it?
Sign me up.
That's all I can say. Yeah, this is one of the shortest windows we've ever had between releases from Padawan to Princess and the Scoundrel. So I've been trying to get through it, but yeah, it's been a hell of a week.
Yeah, it's crazy, and also that little standee from San Diego Comic-Con showing the full dress. I mean, come on, guys, how can you
Beautiful.
not read a book like that?
Leia's full wedding dress.
Beautiful.
Leia's full wedding dress. We saw it.
I want to wear
Amazing.
that to my wedding someday in the
Do
future.
it!
Let's do
Do
it.
Do it.
Do it. Don't let your dreams just be dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
That's a poll. All right.
Perfect.
I'm reading something interesting, which I'm sure will shock some of you. I haven't done it already, but I'm going through Claudia Gray's initial Star Wars novel, Lost Stars.
It's your first time reading Lost
Hey.
Stars? Wow.
I went for the manga version, so I'm going
Oh,
for the
interesting.
actual
Got
book
it.
now. So
Heck yeah, dude.
it's good.
That's awesome.
Like I think that's if you've been around Utini for a while, it's on the top of our like must-read lists for good reasons. It's a very light, breezy book. Like it makes you want to rewatch the movies, the original trilogies, because you have some more
Correct.
context. Like it's definitely something you have to watch the movies first. It's not like, oh, if you want to get into Star Wars, you should read this book first. I don't think it would make much sense. But that's a weak that I'm not using it as a negative. Like it's
No.
good. It's good. It ties itself in very well. Like the two leads have a lot of great chemistry. It's a great book. You should read it if you have not already.
You heard it here first, folks.
Read Lost Stars.
Lost Stars.
Honestly, you probably heard it here last. It's probably like the last. member to be able to recommend this.
That's an interesting perspective,
Awesome, man. That's
though,
exciting.
To read the manga first. Like, I'm interested to hear
Yeah.
your final
Like I want to
thoughts
get to
on
the
that.
end because there's some moments that I'm about halfway through the book, and there's some moments I feel like the manga did better. Something like a more visual one. Like there's like I hope this isn't a spoiler, but there's a point where like Darth Vader is introduced. Like the first time we see Vader, and in the manga, like he's like his like black cloak is like it's really fun because it like envelops the entire like back half of the page, and it's like just by walking through, he's like blacking out the screen just by walking through. It's like there's a couple moments of that where it's like I feel like visually it did it better.
Yeah, well, that's what's so fun. I mean, obviously, us being a comic show, like seeing the different mediums of Star Wars is always so enjoyable for that reason. Like, there's some things that just hit differently. Like, I love being inside the characters' thoughts almost a little more in a novel form of like hundreds of pages. Whereas like a comic, those visual strikes, the page turns, the splash pages you get.
Yep.
And with manga, like the kind of like almost over dramatized versions of the comic of like the intense lines and stuff. Like, I love that Star Wars is around all of them because it really just shows what they all do so well.
Absolutely.
It's rad. Go Star Wars, guys. Go Star Wars.
Go
Star Wars.
In fact, let's do some Go Star Wars. Let's get into the main topic here. If we don't have any distractions, let's just talk about when I saw this coming down in our plans here, I thought, man, this is going to be the easiest episode we've ever done because this is episode 64 is our favorite comics of all time. I made like, it was a little like fake when we did it, so we decided to I decided, and no one else argued with me, let's pick about two of our favorite Star Wars comics. But I did notice the title was, at least in the calendar, was a little vague. And let's also, just to know a little bit more about us, let's take a step outside of the Marvel and Dark Horse publishing and talk about our favorite, non-Star Wars comics, see where it stacks up, see where, where we go when we're not reading about far, far away. So, do we want to go through this like person by person, or do you want to try to do round robins? How do you feel?
I think round robin would be pretty interesting.
Round robin, yeah. Let's each do them and then kind of like circle it around. I love that idea.
Absolutely. So look, I see you've already got my artwork pulled up, so I'll just jump on this sort of thing. For those of you who are actually watching, it's my first choice might be a little obvious. I am wearing no one else has brought it up. No one else has brought it up yet. So kudos to you, but I am wearing my Lando cape right now.
It's
so
like normalized in my mind.
I was gonna say it's like part of your wardrobe to me. Like,
yeah, it just makes sense.
Exactly.
Is this the third week in a row we've mentioned Lando? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe we can Beetlejuice this, and Billy Dale Williams will pop out of woodwork.
I would die.
That would be really weird. But no, it is my personal favorite Star Wars comic of all time is Lando 2015 by Charles Soule. Pencils by Alex Maleev. I feel like I've already talked all there is to talk about with this issue. It's in a wonderful little one shot. It does everything that I want a Star Wars comic to do, especially like a limited series like this. I love it to take a character that we know well, expand upon him a lot more, introduce a little bit more of his backstory, his motivations, maybe flesh out some side characters, some background like noise characters that we saw elsewhere, and just really flesh it all out. Like, I love how everything about this comic like ties together and like points Lando in a direction that we see him going in the movies.
Yeah, I love it. I am not shocked in the least that this
Not
was
even
your
slightly.
favorite. Yeah.
Like, if this was a bingo board, this would be the spot right in the middle, like, you know, free
Free
space.
space.
Free space,
Caleb
yeah.
loves Lando 2015. Like, it's not a controversial pick at all.
No, but it's
Yeah,
great. I
and
mean,
it's a solid comic too.
Yeah, love what you love. You got to feel it out. Yeah, Lando's. It's funny because I read it when it came out, and I haven't revisited it in a while. But as much as you talk about it, it's always one where I'm like, you know what? If I just have a day, it's time to breeze through it. Because I loved Alex Maleev's work on like Daredevil with Brian Michael Bendis back in the day. I always remember seeing him at so many Comic Cons, and I could never afford a commission of his. But like his stuff with Lando is just so. It looks unlike any other Star Wars comic.
Yes.
And it's just really it's excellent.
Yeah,
Sick.
and
Very
honestly,
sick.
when we reread it for our roundtable, I feel like I gained a new appreciation for it that I didn't have in the first read through. So I think it's definitely really beneficial to, you know, reread some stuff that maybe you were a little iffy on at first. You know, get some new eyes on it.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, comics are like a really light media, so it's easy for you to absorb a lot of them.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that sometimes when you like enjoy something, you can go back and reread it and still get a lot more and still get that surprise and enjoyment out of it. I've kind of
100%.
been experiencing that with. I feel like I've read the first volume of the High Republic series like 4 times now.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we talked about it so much, but like each time I go back, I'm like reading it with like different character voices. I'm like really paying attention to the dialogue or sometimes just to the art. So comics really like rereads add a lot of weight to it. So I would highly encourage, you know, even if you feel like, oh, I read this like, you know, a couple of years ago, go back and reread them. Just like go back through the artwork. You know, if you have Marvel Unlimited, it's super easy to just look it up, go back through it. Even just like skim through it and just look at the art and just be reminded of how the art tells the story. So now we've got the obvious pick out of the way. Who wants to go next?
I will go next. And I had no choice. Speaking of
No
rereads,
choice.
No choice at all.
No free
but
will.
to mention Star Wars Shattered Empire.
Yes.
It is an incredible comic, a 4-issue miniseries. It was actually part of the Journey to Star Wars The Force Awakens line. So this came
I always
out like
forget that.
3
Like-
months
like Lost
ahead
Stars.
of The Force Awakens. Right.
Yep.
So super cool. The creators, it was written by Greg Rucka, art by Marco Cicchetto, Angel Anzieta, and Emilio Lazo, with covers by Phil Noto and Marco Cicchetto as well. So this is really neat because it spans like a 3-month time frame between the ending of the Battle of Endor and then like into Operation Cinder, which if you have no idea what that is, it's basically Palpatine's ultimate revenge, his whole contingency of like, if I die, I'm going to bring you down with me kind of a thing.
If I die young, blow up all the planets, kill the people that I really hate. And yeah,
God, I love you so much, dude.
I do too.
It's amazing.
Only
just
Eric
off the
would do
dome. It's really cool. But one of the reasons I think that this is really worth a reread now is because it heavily features Cass Dameron and Charbet.
Yes.
And both Poe's parents, and they are getting a lot of screen time, if you will, in the Star Wars mainline right now.
Well, it's panel time.
Yeah, there's a
Yes.
lot of really cool work with Kess and the Pathfinders working with Han. You get to see Leia, flying an N1 starfighter around Naboo. Super cool, and get to see Luke doing some fun Jedi things as he's starting to kind of go off into his own. And it's a really cool exploration of like, what are our heroes going to do now that the war is won, but it's not.
Right.
And I'm excited to see some of that in Princess and the Scoundrel as well, because it seems like it's going to be taking place shortly after the Battle of Endor. So to see how these two stories kind of line up together, this has been like my favorite time period, I think. And I've been hoping that we get more in this era, the immediate aftermath. Very excited. So definitely read this again. It's gorgeous.
I thought Aftermath was a different series.
Yes.
Yes, and yes, and both. I love what I love about this cover up here that you showed is that Lando is like in the middle of that awkward clap that he does in the middle of Endor.
So true.
Clearly Billy,
oh my God.
like Billy D. Williams is like, I don't know if we're still rolling or not. And he's just like clapping along.
I love that. This is such an iconic cover, honestly. Like, and the
Series
other thing
rocks.
about this comic too is this is the first. I would say this is the first one I can remember, at least. The first book or comic that I read that I really felt like, oh dang, this is like tying stuff together, like with the Operation Cinder stuff, because I had just played Battlefront 2, and I was like, oh my God, this is like filling in the gaps. It's wild, and it's what
like,
really turned me on to like comics, honestly.
Yeah, it's the ultimate connective tissue. I mean, we're about to watch, a trilogy that's going to feature Poe Dameron, who's this ace pilot. And then you're like, well, where did he come from? How is he supposed to relate to anybody that we know originally? And it's like, well, if you read this comic, you would know that his parents were heavily involved in stuff. And it's really cool to see that and to see them get some life here on the other side years later.
Yeah.
I mean, years later. It's cool.
Definitely.
Best. All right, I will step up to the plate. Next here, we have a lot of great comics that we're seeing on the screen. I did a little extra credit because I have to prove myself to y'all. And my first comic that I have chosen, I am showing off a bit because it's the only one that I own all the volumes of thus far, which is
all three of them.
That's right. Also, that's why it makes it easy. It's in one hand. The High Republic by mainly Kevin Scott and Ario Anindito, friend of the show, Ario Anindito, and friend of the Living Force, Kevin Scott. It's funny, when I was chatting with Emma about this prompt, I was like, oh, I'll pick some that folks haven't picked yet because I'm sure someone already has the High Republic. And she's like, well, not yet. And I was like, awesome, dibs. And what I love so much about the High Republic is that it has succeeded where I think some other comics have not, which is taking comics exclusive characters and putting them on par with like book characters in the same initiative. So with the High Republic, obviously, as we've talked ad nauseum, one of the greatest things is that it's in everything. It's in comics, it's in audio dramas, it's in books. And Keith Trennis is just as big a deal as Elzar Mann and Avar Kriss and everyone else. And she's only in the comics. Like, she does not cross over, and yet the story is good enough and the stakes are high enough that these stories really kind of keep the interest of the audience as much as the books. Now, aside from the initiative importance, just purely on the craft of these comics, they've blown me away with every single issue. Kevin's writing in this is just as good as it is in Rising Storm, which is one of my favorite books of all time. And Ario's art is absolutely unhinged with how good it is. The way he draws action is probably the most exciting, but also the moments of loss and the moments of grief, even the moments of comedy, like his facial expressions. And hold on, I'm going to open it up now in front of me. The coloring work, especially by Annalisa Leone, and Mark Morales is the inker who inks like 90% of all comics. But Annalisa Leone's colors are so vibrant and beautiful. And I think they established the visual language of an entire era. And I think that is so hard to do. Because every single other Star Wars comic, at least in the settings and the ships, has had some kind of visual representation to go off of. And this comic was all like, this is what we think it is, and it's all brand new. It's only been described in the books. And yeah, I love it. Every single issue of this so far, it made me more excited. I could not wait to devour every single one of them as they were released, and I cannot wait for Phase 2/Volume 2/Star Wars: The High Republic (2022), whatever we're gonna call it when it comes around here. I believe in October. So yeah. High Republic. Easy for my first choice.
It's so good, and I hated not putting it on my list, honestly, like just because it's so good. But I mean, it's one of those things. Like, somebody asks you, "What are your favorite Star Wars movies?" I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Yep, the most common question that none of us can answer.
Yeah, it's similar to this because I mean, the High Republic is such a masterpiece. It almost feels like it's on its own level in a way, and for a lot of reasons, like what you were saying with the whole like, creating your own its own visual language and stuff like that, establishing a story that's as important as the books. Which I mean, I remember when this thing was announced, none of us even kind of imagined how important the comics would be. We thought they would just kind of be just
be an
add-on throw in, because that's how they always are. In many circumstances where they say that they're going to tie in, and then it kind of turns out to be just something on the side. Yeah, this comic, it pleases me so much as a comics fan.
It's just amazing, and it was our comic of the year. I mean, come on,
it was.
What more do you want?
It had to be on someone's list. Tell me.
Exactly. Although I got to say, Emma, looking at the outline here, I mean, your first choice, which is coming up here, is the only, similar to Caleb, similar to Tim. There was only one choice.
Yes, there was only one choice for me. I figured I would get it out of the way. This is like, okay, y'all, it's never gonna win like the best Star Wars comic ever, right? But this is like my niche love. You know what I mean? It's the one that I always love. I forced everyone to do a round table on it, and that is Mutiny at Mount Cala.
Let's go.
Yes, I just love it. I mean, this cover, y'all. When I saw this cover, I had this feeling in my bones that this is gonna become my favorite comic of all time.
God, that Leia outfit is just all time.
It's so
I mean,
and
my
they're making a
God.
Black series out of it. They're making a Black series, and I can't wait for that to come. When that comes, I'm gonna be showing that off like nobody's business. I considered getting 2, one to keep in the box, one to open.
That is brilliant.
That crazy,
brilliant decision.
But
you should. You should.
Yeah. Consume.
Definitely.
Enable.
I just this comic, I can't. There's so many things I love about it that it's hard to boil it down to a few points. But I would say like getting to see Leia as a leader and all of her facets as a leader. Not only does she like get herself into the action, but she's also a good diplomat. And is able to kind of be everybody's rock because everybody is so rambunctious in her team. Like, I mean, Luke is idiotic a lot of the time.
Yes.
Han doesn't care. He doesn't want to be there. And C-3PO and R2-D2 just bicker the whole time. So she's the one that kind of like holds it together. I mean, Chewie's pretty stable too, I would say. But she definitely holds everyone down. And I would say also just getting to see Mon Cala in this era, in this importance, is really cool. Like, how did they get all those Mon Calan ships in episode? Well, we see some of them in episode 5, but they play a big role in episode 6. How did they get those ships? This is the comic that answers that. That's so cool. Like, who would have even thought that a comic would even answer that question? It's not a question that we needed answered per se, but we got the answer. And how can we forget? How can we forget? I think his name was Tonga, the shapeshifter.
Tonga, right?
Jokester, yeah. And he and C-3PO did a Mon Calan opera together to stall for time for like 3 hours, and it was comedy gold. So shout out to my boy Tonga.
That's the thing you mentioned about Leia. Like she's everybody's rock, but she also does such an incredible job of letting the people around her play their part.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like, this is a thing that I cannot do, but you can, and I need you to do it. And it's so incredible. The writing is excellent there for sure.
Yeah, it's very good. I would say when I was writing, I should say this was written by Kieran Gillen with art by Salvador LaRocca and the covers by David Marquez. It's kind of interesting to me that one of my favorite comics was drawn by Salvador LaRocca. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I agree. It shows like there's good in him. I know it. Like that's what it is. That's what Mutiny at Cala is. Just like there's we don't need it. We're not that kind of show where we need to get into that part of LaRocca, but there is a bit of like,
everybody's got the tea.
He has a lot. He is a far more talented artist than I will ever be.
Same.
And he does really good work on all the technical details on all that. Like every the backgrounds, the opera houses, everything looked immaculate. Like some really
gorgeous vistas.
Some really great work on that. So
it's
he's
really good.
It's really good.
And
so
I need to get a copy, like a physical copy of this. Every time we talk about it on the show, I'm like, why don't I have a physical copy of this? This is wrong. So
You gotta buy it during the show. That's the thing. While someone else is going, now you gotta.
now
Yeah,
I
jump
gotta
on
look
there.
it up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it.
All right. So I guess we'll go back to the top, and that goes back
That's
to
you,
me.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Round robin it.
I picked another. So my next favorite one, Lando was the one that jumped out immediately. I'm like, oh, Lando, of course, naturally. But I'm like, that's a little much. So maybe I should add another one so we can, bounce that out. Actually have discussion here. I thought for a little bit, and then I remembered that probably one of my favorite comic moments came from both volume 5 and 6 from the Dr. Aphra series, the 2016 series. By
Such a good run.
But by this time, it was by Simon Spurrier with pencils by Kev Walker and Emilio Laso. It was really hard to narrow it down. For those who don't remember, Volume 5 was the Catastrophe Con, where she was stuck on the Imperial
I love that
prison
one.
that was being towed
Wow.
by.
Yes.
The prison was just a giant asteroid of crashed starships that when they needed to add more prisoners, they just crashed your ship into that giant ball of ships. And then some really wacky stuff. And it's great because it's a prison heist movie, but it's also in Star Wars, and the stakes are incredibly high. And then volume 6, Worst Among Equals, where she is literally tied to the most evil thing she has created. It's like seeing the Dr. Frankenstein and his creation being like tied at the ankle to each other. Even though they hate each other, they can't escape from one another, and seeing how they bring out the worst in each other. That, like, after that, this volume, like, whenever someone says, Dr. Aphra, and we've done it on this own show, Dr. Aphra, she's just like a evil Indiana Jones. That's a good way of selling the character to someone who's never heard of her before.
Sure.
But this has proved that she's far beyond just a pastiche of a more popular character. She is a definitive individual in the Star Wars universe with like really deep motivation and emotions in her own story.
And she needs her own television series. Gosh dang it.
She does. Yes.
Put her in live action.
Off camera, we were discussing some of the issues that have been going on with some of the live action Star Wars projects and the promise of them all happening. I will say here, I think I've said it before 2025, I'll say at this point, we will see a Dr. Aphra in live action.
God, I
Easy.
hope so. I
Easily.
hope so. I would have sworn that we would have gotten her in live action before Black Chrysanthemum in live action.
I
now
thought
that
so
Black
too.
Chrysanthemum is in live action, I feel like we almost have a better chance in a way. You know what I
Anything is
mean?
possible.
I agree.
Exactly.
They've
I agree.
acknowledged her existence by
Yes.
putting
Yeah.
Black Chrysanthemum.
Like maybe we'll like what we saw in the in Obi-Wan, like where they had like all the names scrawled on the wall. Maybe we'll see something like that in Andor.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not, I say?
I would enjoy
go for
that.
it.
Oh, you mean the Bail Organa show, Caleb? I'm
Bail
holding
Organa
on. I'm holding on hope.
featuring Baby Leia.
There it is. Why not? Put them in
Oh,
everything.
Yes,
Exactly.
I
But
agree.
as I said, the Dr. Aphra run, it was good, but at that point, around volume 5 or around volume 6, I realized this is why I love in like long form comics where they set up like a character for her eventual like fall, like then having that great dramatic moments in that series. Like this was a great like apex of her character development. So don't
100%.
if you're not in there, don't skip to these volumes. Read the series.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yes.
The whole series is absolutely worth your time.
Yep. Great pick. Great pick.
All right.
Solid.
Let's
So
keep this going.
Aphra needs a TV series. You know who else needs a TV series?
Tell me, Tim.
Obi-Wan and Anakin need their own series.
They already have their own. It's called the Clone
the
Wars.
whole thing's about them. I know.
Obi-Wan
I know.
and Anakin.
Don't let this dream die. Okay. Yes, I had to choose Charles Soule's Obi-Wan and Anakin run. It was one of his
It's
one
so
of his
good. It's
first
so good.
one of his first hits. I mean everything he does is a hit, but
It's like his early albums.
Yeah, right.
This is like his college dropout.
But before he sold out.
Yes, but he did not sell out.
He did.
So one of the things that I realized actually when I was going through and trying to decide which comics I wanted to choose for my favorite Star Wars ones, I actually accidentally chose 2 comics whose art is by Marco Cicchetto, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Well, because he's
we
awesome.
I think we need an artist roundtable, or maybe this is it. This is
That's
the artist
a great
spotlight.
idea. I'm writing that down right now.
I love it. Do it. Chiquetto's amazing. All the Daredevil work in there.
I love everything about this comic. And his art style is so unique. It just has like this glossy, like ethereal kind of thing, lots of blues and greens, which is probably a little bit of why my background is such. But this is really cool because this was Disney's or Marvel's first like Jedi centric miniseries after the transition from the buyout. And it shows a young Anakin and Obi-Wan really wrestling with each other. This series is like heavy on the philosophy side on like why war and like why don't the Jedi stop it, and Anakin being young and really wrestling with we have the power to do something, why aren't we doing it, and then kind of becoming disillusioned. He like threatens to leave the order, and Obi-Wan's like, well, how would that work? Like if you left, like I have to fulfill a promise to train you, so like maybe I leave too, ?
Right.
And it's all set against this backdrop of this war-torn planet. They're trying to figure out, you know, where this distress signal came from that they're answering, and it's so heavy. And in the midst of all this, we get to see really the first, I think, look at Palpatine truly grooming Anakin. So you know, he's like, I'm going to pay attention to your career, or you know, whatever, with great interest. And you get to see him, like, there are flashbacks in this comic that show Palpatine like taking Anakin without Obi-Wan around, like to the under parts of Coruscant, like to the lower levels, and like see bad things happen. And look at these senators doing bad things. You want to know why slavery hasn't ended? Because they're here.
Bad things happen in Palpatine's underparts, is what you're saying. I completely get it. You're right.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's what we need to learn from
Eric.
And I'm just listening.
Yeah, and you're active listening, which is important. And I'd like to acknowledge at this point Jared Mays for Naked Palpatine. There you go, buddy.
There it is. We got there.
It's out there now.
So it's really, really, really stellar work. I highly recommend it. And honestly, if you're not going to read it for any of those reasons, I mean, one, what is wrong with you? But two, there are dragons and there are mechs in this.
Yeah, it's got steampunk.
It's
like
awesome.
Frozen,
and there's
Zeppelins.
Yeah, exactly. It had like there were a couple pages there that reminded me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legends of Korra, like Fire Nation with Balloon. Like it's a whole thing.
Plus,
and it is really good.
And Chiquetto's art with like lightsabers, the way he draws them in action is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. One of the most
completely agree.
It's like I still can like envision it now.
Yeah.
I feel like I saw Chiquetto for the first time on maybe Daredevil, or maybe he's doing Daredevil now, but he's done some Marvel work as well before Star Wars, and like he's just electric. He's a really electric artist. I'm so glad you put him on here twice.
Yeah, he is now officially on our show ideas list.
Yes.
Good.
And Tim, if you're not still joining us on the show by then, we'll have you back. Definitely.
Yes, that sounds
There it
incredible. Ready for it.
All right, well, I'm ready for that. I hope you're also ready for my next pick, because that is going to be very similar to my first pick. I'm so sorry to do this twice.
We're
doing High Republic Adventures.
Just makes sense.
High Republic Adventures, which is for some reason by IDW and not Marvel. I don't know why. This is by Daniel Jose Older and Harvey Tolabau mainly. This series, when it was coming out, I kept saying was one of the most slept on, underrated comics I've maybe ever read.
Yeah.
And it was the first comic in a while that's made me truly respect the storytelling of like all ages comics, which is also more on me for not being as open to it as other kind of mediums. But the way that Daniel Jose Older writes these kids in this story is just incredible. And I've never connected so quickly with like Padawan characters or any younger characters that I have as reading this comic. And I also think Harvey Tolabau is like just truly just off the charts with the art in this book. Like it is so detailed. The amount of like specific artistic things like folds in fabric and like skin tones and textures and like all these kinds of things throughout this series just make it so epic. And I think it does have some of the best splash pages in all of Star Wars. Some of these 2-page spreads in any of these giant action sequences are so fun, but also the emotional truths of people, especially Lula and Zine, whose relationship kind of blossoms throughout this series, are so beautiful. And it's in a way we have not quite seen in Star Wars before. And if you take this series and marry it to Daniel Jose Wheeler's Midnight Horizon, the YA book, it is
Oh my gosh.
one of the most perfect mashups of storytelling in all of Star Wars publishing I've ever read. And overall, I just think that this series was a little hard to follow because the IDW releases currently it's hard to find just physically because even the IDW trades like I held up here are smaller. They're not full sized. Now that Dark Horse is getting the license back, like there's licensing issues. Like they don't make it easy to read this, which is infuriating. But overall, I think that if you waited on this because it was a younger comic, or if you just didn't have it on Marvel Unlimited or whatever, it's worth whatever kind of small monetary sacrifice you have to make to find it. Because I think some of the best High Republic characters in the whole initiative are found in these pages.
I
will say
completely agree.
There is hope. So not
Yeah.
necessarily on the American side of things, but in the UK and in France, maybe. I can't remember. I think Panini Comics is going to be releasing them. So if you jump into our Discord, we have friends all over the world in there, and they will smuggle stuff for you.
Camilla!
So,
It is worth the price of shipping.
It is worth the price of shipping.
Yeah.
And of trusting the French, which is also a price to pay. Anyway.
Wow.
Apologies to any of our French listeners. My goodness.
Yeah. We'll move on right past that. Please forget my anti-French sentiments. Emma, what comics do you like in Star Wars?
Oh, goodness gracious. How do I follow that up? Well, I think my next pick is definitely something that everyone can agree with is very good.
That is correct.
Generally. My pick is Dark Lord of the Sith. And we all know that's another one of Charles Soule's bangers. Yes.
Get it!
And the art is by Giuseppe Camuncoli. And I mean, first of all, I need to address this cover. This cover has the Death Star, like in progress Death Star, like first Death Star in the background.
I
didn't
never
notice it
noticed
until
that.
tonight.
Nor have I.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
God.
that's 4 for 4.
And you've got like Death Troopers, and I'm like, I can't tell if that's Geonosis maybe on the bottom. I'm like trying to look at I don't know. It's something, dude, but I mean, this is such a good cover. I mean, cover aside, the series itself is incredible. I didn't realize how much I needed more Jocasta new content until now, or until I read it. And it was, I mean, she's a badass. She's awesome. And,
I mean, dude, honestly, if Tim put up Charles Soule's College Dropout, this is Charles Soule's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy album. Like, this is the maximalist.
Yes.
I'm putting everything I've learned into this one series. This is the correct answer for the. I know we all tried here, but Emma, you got the correct answer on this one.
It's his masterpiece. I mean, you know, Charles Soule, he just celebrated his 100th written issue in Star Wars, and I feel like, you know, we were talking about it, was it last week or the week before? But we were talking about it, and you know, Dark Lord of the Sith definitely came up in a lot of conversations on like what is his best work in Star Wars. It's pretty undeniable. He gets in the head of Darth Vader more than anyone had before. We see just an insane amount of callbacks, and we get to see his visions. Like, who would have ever thought that we needed to see Vader's visions until then? Turns out they're extremely interesting. And also the Inquisitors, man, like getting to see how the Inquisitor program started, how Darth Vader trains them and interacts with them. It was just so fascinating, and I'm so glad that we have this comic. It's one that I only read once, but I desperately want to have time to revisit it. Because it just, I want that feeling again. Like, can't put it down. Just feeling so good about it at every turn. And it's so interesting to do that with a character like Darth Vader, you know. But people have been on a roll with him, you know, Charles Soule and Greg Pak.
Yeah, and I love what he does because this is the Moment series, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
this is the Moment. Like,
yes.
Charles Soule in this series does, I think, what we all across all shows love so much, which is use established characters to really like build out Force lore. Because like we learn about this universe through the character stories, and the way that he uses a Vader comic to expand like the Sith of the old days is like
insane,
just wild. And the Camuncoli art on this series is really just so visceral and dynamic, which is so hard because you have a character who is masked the entire time and technically can't show emotion, which for comic artists is so hard because it's all static imagery. And I think that some folks don't give Vader the artistic respect that he needs by not quite doing as much with the mask as you can.
Yeah.
But man, just the artistic intelligence it takes for a comic artist to choose the angle of the mask, the shadows, the lights. Like this series, I think really you can see the tragedy of Vader with the mask still on in static imagery, and I think that's just impossible.
Great use of body language too. Like,
yes, yep.
You can definitely tell what he's feeling by looking at his body. It's so good, and then you get to see them building Vader's castle. I mean, my goodness, who thought that we needed that? But we did.
Yeah.
And I think the best part about that whole arc of Darth Moment is that it actually ties back to the Lando 2015 series.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Yes,
it's the Soulverse.
It's all coming together.
Yes, he flips his cape.
Yes.
All right. So
Caleb, it's back to you.
It's back to me. So I figured we could have some fun because we talk about Star Wars comics a lot here.
It's true, we do.
Yeah,
our thing.
An awful lot. It is our thing. But
true. Go on.
Comics is a very large industry, so I thought it'd be fun. We don't have to get into extreme detail here, but just to talk about our favorite comics, and not just Star Wars ones, but what we see also outside of the realms of the galaxy far, far away. So, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about. I might talk about this for quite a long time. One of my favorite comics ever is the All-Star Superman run.
Yeah,
great choice. Such a good choice.
Grant Morrison and art by Frank Quitely. Gosh, this is such a great comic. Superman is my favorite superhero. I distinctly remember having pillowcases like safety pinned to my shoulder when I was like 3. When I was like 4.
Man.
Like it was like growing up on those why am I blanking on his name? Do you like the original 1940s animated series by the guy who invented rotoscoping? Like,
oh my god,
some amazing, like that was like some childhood defining sort of moments here. And like I feel like Superman has kind of gotten a not a bad deal, but I feel like he's very easily misunderstood by a lot of writers and a lot of comic authors as well. But this one, All-Star Superman, it's a fantastic 12-issue run by Grant Morrison, and it's probably like apex Superman. It is like the best it's ever been. Like if you ever want to say like Superman's too strong, he's not boring or he's not interesting, like the comic starts with him getting like even more superpowered than he's ever been before. But the comic is so dynamic, and it explores such like niche parts about his character design. One of my good friends I know in real life, I'm going to shout you out, Chris, is like our very first conversation was about this comic, and here we are like nearly 10 years later, and we still hang out like weekly. But like this comic is like, it's defining. It is a great moment of Superman's Superman-dom, essentially.
I have no notes.
No, it's
absolutely incredible.
When I was in college and I started reading Marvel and DC, I had a really hard time with Superman myself because I was your Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Paramore emo boy, and I'm like, who's this golden child? I do not care about him. I need my misery boys. But
he's not as cool as Batman.
Exactly. But then I read All-Star Superman and I got it because it is there seems to be an issue with Superman in like the modern context, especially where artists and writers want to redefine him and make him morose and make him actually like The Boys or like Irredeemable from Boom Comics, like all these other comics where you want to change him up. And it's like, no, if you actually have a person who is as powerful and as good as him, that's actually exactly the kind of story that every year needs. And Grant Morrison taps into him so perfectly. Grant Morrison also wrote a book called Superhuman, which is amazing. It's about like the psychology of superheroes in the modern day. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it before. But he delves into what he believes about heroes in every decade and every year. And this non-cynical look at Superman, I think, is such a weird breath of fresh air in the comics industry. And if you haven't read it, like Caleb's saying, each issue kind of takes a different side of Superman as a different person that he's helping and a different kind of Herculean labor, if you will. It's kind of like the format. Great choice. I love it. And I think not to sound like an old man, but they don't quite make comics like that as much nowadays.
I do want to say this. If you
Yes.
have already read All-Star Superman and you love that and you want more of that, there's a really great like 5-issue series called Superman Up in the Sky. I feel like the apexes and the high points of that are as good as All-Star, if not maybe even more.
Amazing.
Wonderful news.
Like it is great. I'll try to hit you two up.
Tom King. Yeah, Tom King's amazing.
Yes. It is a really, really good. I haven't read any of his other work, but Superman Up in the Sky, like it's just a really like if you just want to be gut punched with emotion, 10 out of 10. Highly recommend.
There we go. 2 for 1.
Sweet. I'm gonna keep it in the DC house, if that's all right. So Caleb stole my pick. I'm just gonna tell you, All-Star Superman is like my bread and butter. The essential Superman, like he is just distilled into everything. But I'd say my next favorite character who got a lot of life because of the CW show would be the Flash. This particular volume comes right as DC was undergoing their rebirth initiative. So Eric kind of talked about the kind of morose and the kind of moody-ish changes on DC that they tried there from like 2011 to 2015, 16. This was like trying to get back to superheroes, to DC being like at their best, at their peak. And they did a lot of really cool things. But I think the Flash, he's so full of hope, but he also has a little bit of that detectiveness in him. He pairs up a lot with Batman in the first couple of volumes of each of their runs. And he's got I'm trying to solve problems. He goes to the crime scenes. He's kind of the investigative side on that back end, and he wants to figure things out, put things back together, but he's so full of hope. And the CW Flash series, I think, inspired a lot of this goodness coming back. And I'll say that Josh Williamson absolutely kills the writing on this. Carmen D. Giandomenico also did a wonderful job on some really cool art with like Godspeed is this new villain in the series, all white suit with like lightning being very extravagant. He writes motion very well. It's just, I could not recommend it enough. There's it's a little bit of essence, kind of like in the MCU. You know how I had the blip where like everybody kind of is gone and they kind of come back in the middle of nowhere? That kind of happens with this initiative, and people have to figure out how to move on with it. Like some people come back, some memories come back from like this weird kind of time lapse thing that occurs in DC. Also, maybe Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen graphic novel is a big player in this.
This is a wild time in DC Comics. This was a wild time.
It was absolutely bonkers. But you see Barry, who runs like really, really fast and takes life very, very quick, like start to slow down and realize there is more to life than me trying to just do nothing but go to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. And he helps people walk through that. And I think that's so important. And I think, Eric, you say it a lot all the time, like comic writers and book writers write for their day. And while this happened kind of pre-COVID, it was really interesting to get in there and go like, yeah, it is okay to slow down. Things have been hectic for a little bit. Let's see if we can figure it out. And I love that about this run. So
I will say, Tim, you said that he takes life quickly. And I'm like, so he's just like kills people without a second thought. I know that's not what you meant.
No, this is not the boys. This is not the boys.
Okay, great. They take life quickly.
Exactly. Like what? One other thing I do want to quickly say is I feel like one thing I love about modern going back to these classic like good person superhero and like Superman is I feel like we're now getting more like people trying to deconstruct Superman and trying to make it edgy than we are actually getting actual Superman.
Yeah.
We've broken down these superheroes into like and trying to make them mean more often than we are trying to make them kind.
Yeah, they're heroes. Yep. Let them be heroes. And I think this run does that really well across the entire initiative. So
yeah, when I was a kid, I grew up watching Lois and Clark, which was my Superman, and it reminded me of like also Superman and that stuff of the no cynicalness, just regular hero. Now, of course, if you don't know, Dean Cain grew up to be a royal prick, which is unfortunate. But Superman was not, because it was just like, here's Perry White, and he runs a paper, and he's a hero from Kansas. And I think there's been glimpses of that, but these kind of stories with like you're saying, Barry Allen and the Flash, and Clark and Superman, I think there's not an accident that we're picking our favorite stories of just good heroes. Because man, isn't it refreshing just for good people to help people?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads into, I threw in an extra bonus, and we were only supposed to pick one, but I could not leave this show without talking about Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. So here's the thing. This is subversive. It is epic space opera fantasy, and it is very, very mature. This is one of those comics that you don't read with your parents around or your children. Like, just gonna be honest with you. I mean, the
don't
cover,
read it on the bus. I did that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
We'll do that. I mean, the cover itself, like, already you know what you're kind of getting into. I mean, like, you have a mom and a dad who are from very different cultures. They are not the same, and she's just like breastfeeding her child on the cover, like,
while carrying a knife. What a badass!
While carrying a knife.
Alana is the best.
Absolutely a badass. It was heavily influenced by Star Wars. And Brian K. Vaughan worked a lot of this stuff like from his life. So some of the thoughts and ideas that he had as a child, and then also as a parent, he really like put into this. And Fiona Staples is next level with art. And they do a really cool thing in this series where there's a narrator, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you there, but whenever the narrator is talking, Fiona uses her own handwriting, like just free form over the art instead of like in the little text boxes and stuff like that. It is some of the most incredible art I've ever seen in my entire life. But I had to read like basically the little bitty like 2-3 sentence plot synopsis for it. It's the sweeping tale of one young family fighting to find their place in the universe. When two soldiers from opposite sides of a never-ending galactic war fall in love, they risk everything to bring a fragile new life into a dangerous old world. And like, if you've ever wanted a mature R-rated Star Wars, like this is essentially it. Yep. Like it is bonkers. It is crazy. It's so good. So good.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I gotta say, Tim, I'll go next with mine. I was gonna pick this one because I will show here as well. That's the only one I buy the giant expanded versions of Saga. I buy it digitally. I've bought trades. I have bought so much Saga in my life because I think it is one of the most important narratives of all comics history. I think it is a feat. Yep. Also, there was a giant hiatus between. There was an arc that just finished. It came back after almost 4 years of being off.
4 years.
4 years. And I went to my comic book shop had a midnight event to go get the next issue because it was that big of a deal. So
beautiful. Yeah, it is one.
Cannot recommend it enough. It's
Eisner
perfect.
Award after Eisner Award. I mean, this is the cream of the crop in comicscapes. Ever.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Bryan Cranston was getting all those Emmys. Like anytime Saga was up for an Eisner, they're like, "All right, well, this is gonna win best, so better luck next year, everyone."
Yep.
But I thought about Saga, but then I jumped into Slack and found that Tim had absolutely chosen it, which I assumed. So tonight I want to talk about one of my favorite non-Star Wars comics. I have all these physically because it's great. Which is called Fear Agent. This is another deluxe edition that I'm showing on the camera here. Yeah, very hefty. But of course we have more covers of it here. So this is by my favorite comics writer, maybe my second favorite comics writer, Rick Remender, with art by Tony Moore, who is the original artist on The Walking Dead, and Jerome Opeña, who is probably my favorite comic book artist of all time. And what this is, gosh, how to describe Fear Agent? It's a sci-fi book, and there's a guy who is essentially begins as kind of an exterminator in space, but he's like a Texan, and he drinks whiskey and flies a spaceship. It's Wes. And then the whole story kind of turns once he starts finding that there's maybe another version of himself, and it gets into hard sci-fi, like alternate realities, multiple people, enslavement of entire races by superior planets, breaking the time stream, alternate universes. And all of it happens with something that Rick Remender does very well. This is a probably early aughts book, if I remember correctly. And around this time, he gets really into the main character, Heath's relationship with both his son and his father. I am a sucker for sons trying to figure out their fathers. Me and my dad have a good relationship. It's just a story that I like. But like, it is so intensely personal and profound whilst this guy is fighting aliens. And I think it's one of the things that, those of us that love sci-fi and fantasy adore so much, is that it's using the lens of this incredibly wild, zany universe and time travel and alternate dimensions and all these kind of things to tell the story about a man finding himself in the galaxy. And this I remember when it ended, I jumped on it late and I read the last issue and went to my local comic book shop and bought it. And it was an event of realizing that I'd seen this man go without any spoilers, because I do highly recommend you picking it up. I watched him kind of get his entire life set in a certain way, and it was very cathartic. Because in Star Wars, we don't have a lot of endings. The beautiful thing about the universe is that it keeps going, and comics like these do have endings. And it is beautiful. If you want to spend a ton of money and just trust my word, there's 2 giant library editions, but it's published by Dark Horse. It bounced around to Image as well, I believe. But yeah, Fear Agent by Rick Remender. And if you like this, I highly recommend Black Science by Rick Remender, which is another one of daddy issues and family stuff. And Deadly Class, which is his story with Image, which is about a school full of assassins in the 1980s. So, a couple of my favorite non-Star Wars comics. I bought a lot of comics when I was in college. It was a good time.
Yeah, I looked it up. That started in 2005.
Yep.
And it ended in 2011, so a long run.
Yep, I was in college. It was great.
Very interesting. Well,
sad.
I'm about to be boring because I haven't. I know.
Better.
I haven't read a single comic outside of the Star Wars universe, and I'm ashamed of that.
Ever?
Honestly.
Really?
Ever? Ever.
Well, now you got like 4 to read. Here you go.
Yeah.
We're about to change.
You got to read Saga, Emma. You got to read Saga.
I should. I will. It
But
sounds interesting. But I wasn't about to leave you guys without me picking anything. I did have a pick, and then I was like, wait a second, I kind of want to pick 2 more. So I kind of cheated a little bit. I picked 2 more Star Wars ones.
You're running the show.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
figured I could make the rules. Yeah. So the first one I want to shout out is so good, The Rise of Kylo Ren. I mean,
oh yes.
What is there not to say about The Rise of Kylo Ren? I mean, it was the first time we got a High Republic Easter egg, which is wild
oh my
to
God,
think about
right?
now. I think it was they were on that planet.
Elfrona.
Elfrona, yeah.
Elfrona, right?
Elfrona, and there was a holocron with Avar Kriss. It was really cool. And but aside of all that, I love how we've picked mostly Charles Soule comics. I just realized
He's just real good.
There's also a lot of it. There's a lot of his comics.
There's a lot of his
It's true.
comics. He happens to be a very good writer. So yeah, this is written by Charles Soule, with art by Will Sliney and colors by Guru EFX. Obviously, it's a story of how, I think the pitch for it was like from Ben to Ren or something like that, and that's very accurate.
Yeah.
We get to see how Ben interacts with Luke as his master, and go on a mission. We get a little bit of Lore Santeca in there. It's pretty cool. And we also get to see how he interacts with his peers as well. It's kind of core group and how they react to everything, and just seeing how he was always kind of bound to turn to the dark side. He didn't have much support, from his parents. They just kind of sent him off to Luke, and Luke really only focused on not him being his nephew or anything, but on him being a Jedi. And I think Ben really was craving some more support than that. And I think it was really interesting to kind of see how that deteriorated the status of his life, and kind of his emotional well-being. And it's just a very fascinating character study on Ben Solo that we don't get to see hardly ever at all. And it made me desperately want some more content from it. And yeah, it's a tragic story, and one that I'm glad we got. I think it answered a lot of questions that people had coming out of The Last Jedi, whose version of the story was real, etc., etc. And I was shocked that nobody had picked it by the time I picked it, and because it's just really good. It's in our Comics Foundational 5, so for a very good reason.
Absolutely.
It really made Kylo / Ben such an intensely amazing character, and I forget sometimes how much I love him as a character.
Yeah, me
just
too.
because he's not in as much stuff now, and like The Rise of Skywalker was my favorite film, so I kind of forget how much I really did love everything he did. And this comic, you want to talk about getting into someone's head and really psychologically figuring out like how he evolved and how he became one of the most complex characters in the saga. No one better for it than Charles Soule and Sliney, and their partnership is just something to behold.
Definitely. I hope we get more Star Wars stuff from Will Sliney.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed his drawing. It wasn't like too realistic, but it wasn't too like comic-y either. It was good.
Yeah, like you could definitely tell that this was Ben Solo, but he was also we weren't getting exact. Why am I blanking on his actor's
no photo
name?
tracing or something like that?
No
For Adam
tracing.
Driver.
Adam Driver. Yeah, it was great, and it was like it's great to see like a character we want to see more of, given more.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So my last pick, and I was having a really hard time like between these two, which one to pick. So I just picked them both. And this one is The Trail of Shadows from the High Republic.
Yes!
It is so good.
Of Round Table fame.
Yes, of Round Table fame.
Incredible.
Is this 3 out of 3 for all the High Republic comics?
I believe so.
Yes, every High Republic comic is in here.
That's true. That's true.
Oh wow,
it's just
that's perfect.
It's just really good. I mean, we recently did a roundtable on it, and I think one of the things that we kept coming back to is that this is like the most important content in the entire third wave of the first phase. And the fact that that came out of a comic is insane. Like, it's nuts. The writing from Daniel Jose Older was so good, and David Wachter did the drawing, and the characters were interesting. We hadn't seen them in anything before in the High Republic. Cyan Holt, she's not a Jedi. She's kind of like the sort of sidekick, I guess you could say. Non-force
she's almost a femme fatale, but has like more agency, which is like the best. Yeah.
He's the femme fatale and the hard-boiled PI like mixed together.
Yes, definitely. And I was worried when I saw the synopsis of this series. I was like, oh boy, this kind of seems a little like the gender roles are typical, I would say. But I should have trusted DJO because he always pulls through, and just a really good story. Lots of just so much consequential stuff. It's just heartbreaking, and of course this is I have to mention it. This is the issue or the series that we get. Buckets of blood in his underwear. So
Buckets of blood.
Buckets of blood.
Yes, that's
we do.
Iconic. Yeah,
most importantly,
very iconic, and just it combines like High Republic comic, High Republic Adventures, and the books. It really is kind of the glue that holds everything together, and I think it was just so well done. It really was. Everything in the High Republic was, but this one in particular.
And I will say, Trail of Shadows will always have a special place in my heart, because when we were at Celebration, in order to get a ticket to go get things signed by the authors, you had to buy something. And Trail of Shadows was the only piece of High Republic media that they had available that I hadn't owned. So because of Trail of Shadows, I was able to get all the authors to sign my poster and my background. So other than being a great story and great artwork, it was also the literal key that allowed me to meet all the authors. So well done, Trail of Shadows.
Thank you, Trail of Shadows. Tim, you did that too, right?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. My intention was to just get it signed. And then what had happened was Emma was like, no, Emma didn't encourage me. I encouraged myself. Hey, you want to buy the big fancy books with the Arabesh on them? And I was like, I think I have to. And then I was like, well, why did I buy the comic? Because it's great. That's why.
Yeah. Who was I with when I talked myself into that? Was I with
you
Tim,
were with
right?
me. Yeah.
Because
you were like, I'm
we
gonna
both
regret
did
this,
it.
aren't I? And I was like, yeah, you will.
Yeah.
And have you though? Have you regretted it?
No.
Because they're amazing.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So cool.
I look at it every day.
Mine's off camera.
I wake up, my bookshelf is like slightly off to the right of my bed. I wake up, I look at it, I'm like, damn, that was such a good day. Like, it was such a good day. I miss it.
It's great stuff.
So much fun.
And a great comic to kind of round us out. I love that.
physical
Yes, that cover is amazing.
It's so good.
In a lot
For
of
those
trades, they just
audio
kinda,
listeners, it's the
the cover for the trade for the Trail of Shadows.
Yep.
Usually they just use like one of the
volume,
issues.
like
number one
covers,
Yeah, like issue 1. But this one, was like I think it was a variant for one of them. But it's so good. It
blue
like,
and yellow just pops.
It pops. It
Yeah.
encapsulates what it's about. It's got some creepy eyes on the bottom for the
for the shadows,
what is that called?
Oh, for the
leveler.
Seth. Yeah.
And I don't know, guys. If you've been holding back on High Republic stuff, I mean, you need to read some other
Stop
stuff
it.
before this. But stop
Get
it.
some help.
Rethink your life.
That's what we love.
Yeah.
Oh man, gosh, what a collection! What a
It's
great
just-
bunch of issues
This
tonight.
was such a great conversation, and I mean, I think it's always good to kind of rave about the things you love. It's like pouring your heart out, and I mean, it's almost hard to pick them because all Star Wars is good Star Wars in even the slightest way, and there's so many good comics that we haven't even talked about like at all, and it just proves like how much good content there is out there.
Yep, absolutely love
Absolutely.
it. Can't wait for more.
But there's no more for tonight, unfortunately.
Nope,
No.
that is it. Thank you all for having me tonight. It's always lovely to join you fine
Yes.
folks. And I know that the hosts are going to be jumbling up again as time goes on here in a little bit. But I can't wait. Let's see. What are you guys doing next? Emma, what are you guys doing next week?
Yeah, so next week I'm so excited for this. I kind of forgot I put this on
Oh
the
my goodness, I
calendar.
just read the outline. You're doing that?
Yeah.
We
We're
are
doing
Oh my
it.
god,
revisiting-
amazing.
Revisiting the 1977 Star Wars run. This
Yes.
was all inspired by that really wacky episode. I think it was either
Like
the
the
craziest,
weirdest
I'm pretty sure it
moments
was
in
the
comics.
craziest, weirdest moments in Star Wars comics.
Wow.
And when Tyler started speaking about all the 77 stuff, I knew we had to do a whole episode on that. And I really
Yep.
can't wait. Like, it created my anecdote on the celebration panel. Like, that is what we're talking about here. This is what's at stake.
Awesome.
And I really
Love
can't wait
it.
for that. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then let me rephrase this. This episode is airing on Thursday. So
Yep.
tonight on Legends Look Back, they're going to be doing a July Jamboree. I don't know what that means, but I'm looking forward to it.
We never know when Legends Look Back. It's always a great
Yeah.
surprise.
It's
I
legends.
love it.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
You
it's
never
legendary.
Know. You never know. Eric, do you want to tell the folks what's happening on Living Force next week?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were going to start our Shadow of the Sith roundtable next week, but our good friend Dr. Charles Hankel is still on vacation, and of course we cannot do roundtables without him. So we moved up our episode about Star Wars romance in honor of the upcoming Princess and the Scoundrel. Emma, you'll be back joining us
I
on
will.
Monday night for that. All about kissing books is basically what it's
We
going to
love
be.
kissing
It's gonna
in
be,
Star
We
Wars.
love kissing. It's great in Star Wars. So we're talking about the history of Star Wars romance, when it works, and even maybe more fun when it doesn't. I think that leads to some of our favorite stories. So we will see you again all the nights. You can do Utini things. And of course, be sure to stay tuned to this very YouTube channel, the podcast catchers, the website, utini.com for all the constant updates. We're actually in the process of bringing on some more folks to make more website content, tease. So stay tuned for all the guides and stuff you could ever want. But, that'll do it. My friends, for this week's episode of The Cosmic Force. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show right here on YouTube, where you can hear us live every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We also encourage you to subscribe to the audio version on whatever podcast platform you listen to, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure to leave reviews if you haven't already to help people find the show. You can follow us on Twitter and tweet at the show at Cosmic Force Show to stay informed about Star Wars comics happenings all week. Or you can follow the host individually. Emma is at Irma Jedi 26. Caleb is at Caleb Lamanek. Tim is at TC Guthrie 2 _ I don't know. It's not in the outline. I'm at Eric Eilersen. And always remember, for reviews, articles, and news for the rest of the EU or expanded universe, visit utini.com every day. We also encourage you to join the Utini Discord by going to utini.com/Discord. And you can help support the show by heading to patreon.com/Utini or utini.com/Patreon, getting exclusive perks like extra shows, early access to shows, and behind-the-scenes videos of our celebration hauls. A special thank you to Brian Dooley, Earl Q, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Matt Billington, Elizabeth Cloutier, and Sally and Chris Eilersen on our Alliance High Command. Thank you to Emma, Caleb, and Tim for hosting with me. Thank you to all of you for watching and listening. And as always, may the Force be with you.